Hello and welcome to another edition of your Pittsburgh Steelers show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradshaw DeBen, a.k.a. Will Massasak, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter, and a couple of names I can't repeat here. And joining me on this special bye-week edition of the show are my two regular cohorts from somewhere in East Suburban Zone 22A. That would be Steel Perch. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Infectious as always.
Yes. And masked. You're usually masked when you go to work, but this is especially tough 6 months for you to be masked while you're at home and at work. I think there was like a bank robbing joke in there, but it fell. Also with us from somewhere in the South, it is FC, also known as Dom. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well, and how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. What is going on? The Steelers, I heard there's some news with them going on the last couple of days. I'm just kidding. I think everybody knows at this point the Steelers game with Tennessee is canceled or postponed. And the thing, I guess, just quickly, since we're going to start with this, I guess, FC, did you think it was kind of it feels like the Steelers are being punished a little bit for something that they didn't really do? What's your take on this? Are you seeing it glass half empty or glass half full?
In this case, I'm seeing it glass half empty. It's an early bye week that we're supposedly getting. And we're going to basically have to play, 13 weeks in a row, plus if we make the playoffs. It's kind of a brutal stretch.
Yeah, but I know what Perch is going to say. Perch, weigh in. Tell him what you're going to say.
Well, you don't know what I'm going to say.
Oh, I see. I figured for sure you were going to point out that when the Steelers have gotten an early bye, they've always done really well. In fact, they won the Super Bowl in 2005 with a Week 4 bye, just like this. Isn't that what you were going to say?
No, I'm way out in left field here. So here's what I'm going to say. Okay. I'm going to go back to my wheelhouse and pull out a Tomlinism. But as he said, and a few teammates have repeated, if one fails, we all fail with this damn COVID thing, right? What happens if the Steelers now get infected? What happens if another Steelers opponent gets infected? You can't keep delaying games and pushing things out, or they're going to be playing into next season. What they should have done was, if you had a breakout within your facility, you forfeit that week's game, move on with the schedule, survivor style. I don't care if at the end of the season there's only 12 healthy teams left and those 12 teams make the playoffs and go with it. You almost have to do that, or you just go by percentages. One team plays 13 games, another one plays 11, another one plays 15. Otherwise, there's no possible way to end the season on time without running through the draft, running this into next year. I think what they did with this first outbreak is just going to open up a massive hornet's nest. So, like I said, what happens if the Steelers get an outbreak later in the year? There is no bye week to conveniently dump stuff into. What if another one of their opponents gets an outbreak? I think the whole thing's a mess, and I think the season's really on the brink now. That this is the way they're going to run it. It may end up getting canceled, or maybe they just do top 4 seeds for the playoffs, and that's it, or something like that. But it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like on the brink a little bit. I think you're right about that, because it does. It just sort of feels like so many things could go wrong, and in a way, to me, the glass half full. The thing to be happy about is that the Steelers are not going to play a team where there's a possibility somebody on that team is already walking around infected, because to me, if the opponents come down with having to be quarantined and test positive, that's bad enough. But if the Steelers themselves come up having to be quarantined or they miss a game because of their own problems, that to me is a little bit bigger issue, because it's that's when the season really goes south for your team. As I fear it might actually be for Tennessee a little bit right now. There wasn't really a question in there, but you got something to add, FC?
No, you both make fair points. Also agree that this season could be on the brink. I could also see them shortening shortening the season to maybe 12 games, maybe 10. But they need to try to staff players, need to attempt to keep COVID, measures as best as possible, but it's impossible. So
yeah. Well, Perch, they did. I mean, in the classic case of closing the barn doors after the horses escape, they are now going to require that players and coaches at practice wear masks and gloves. Everybody except for the quarterback's throwing hand, and that just seems like something that would have made sense to do from the beginning. There wasn't really a strong reason to not do that, and I think they even, if you saw the early pictures of the Steelers sort of pseudo camp, like before they were really started with camp, but they had started doing practices together, that they were wearing masks and so on. It just feels like, this thing seems to have been caused in Tennessee because they signed a practice squad player who practiced with the team for one day and created this shitstorm. So, I mean, that doesn't feel like a big sacrifice to make, but I think you're right, though, that it is just, it's sort of folly to think that there aren't going to be any other cases and any other games affected. Right, Perch?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I think the big major cluster here is they now set a precedent to push the game to a team's bye week, which conveniently it kind of worked out for the Steelers, and they're able to make that happen. And the Titans, their bye weeks weren't too far off or whatever, but it's just it can't happen again. Really, I mean, what happens if a team already misses their bye week? What happens if a team is 2 and 3 and 4 different games during the season to get affected? They're going to have to start making things up on the fly.
I don't know. Just it did feel like they were going to try to play the game on Monday, but this is the latest. They had yet another positive test, so maybe if this thing happens to another team, they'll be able to contain it a little bit better, hopefully. But I mean, your guess is as good as mine. There's not much.
Not with the 14-day incubation period. Not really. If you get 2 or 3 guys on a team that come down with it, that team can't practice that week, and you're going to have to keep testing for 2 weeks. It's going to get ugly.
Yeah, because Tennessee's scheduled to play, next week too. So, if this goes on longer than a week, it really does upset the apple cart quite a bit. Well, FC, let's talk a little bit about the stuff we can talk about that we know a little more about than the future of the NFL's health. And that is last week's game. The Steelers managed to make it 3-0. That was sort of the tale of two halves, was it not, for the Steelers against
the Texans? Yeah.
The Houston Texans.
Mixed feelings, mixed bag. Never going to complain about a win, So 3-0, moving on. But there was second half, the defense played well. I have a big problem more with play calling on both sides of the ball than necessarily play of players, which is kind of funny. I thought Chuck's second week in a row, pretty good against J.J. Watt. So that's a big positive to take out of the game. Ben threw some nice balls. If Claypool, if those are going to be the rookie mistakes that he makes, hey, I'll take them. Ball was in the right hand, the ball went out of bounds. Can't fumble, but more positives than negatives. I was concerned with the first half. Second half, the Steelers defense clamped down, kept rush lanes, rushed more creatively, more controlled. Got an interior push from Tuitt and Alou. Overall, can't complain with a win.
Yeah, you can't complain, but we will. We'll try. Perch, I saw this as a case of that the Steelers, and I said this as much when I wrote my post-game write-up, and that is, it feels like the Steelers in the first half were basically doing two things. One was they were investing in the run game because they figured if they stuck with it long enough that into the end of the game that they would be able to dominate Houston, and that actually worked out to perfection. It's like for as many times as they think they're going to do that at the beginning of the game, if and have it not pay off. I thought Sunday was an example where it really did pay off to keep plugging the run, because by the time it got to the second half, it didn't look like Houston could stop anything. They could run the same play over and over again. But the other thing I think that they're doing is, in like a typical September, it seems like they're evaluating what they themselves can do. Like what is this year's team, and what are we capable of doing? What are we good at? What do we need to work on? Do you see them as sort of like using these first few games to, basically refine who they are as a team?
Yeah, I think that's always part of what they do. But I'm going to take this in a different direction. This probably was the first week that I think I got a full appreciation for the Matt Canada effect on that offense. How much did we complain on this podcast last year about absolutely no window dressing, no motion before snap, just line up and run it into the middle of the line? And the way that they used the 4 running backs that they used last week, and a lot of the window dressing, and now they're starting to get, they haven't played 3 great defenses yet. They're starting to get to the point where they're averaging 4 or 5 yards a carry pretty consistently. So, take it with a grain of salt. We'll see how it goes as the season goes on. But I think that could be the story of the season as things go on with this offense, where they're able to get a lot more window dressing with that run game, a lot more unpredictability, and I think that's going to make their running backs all look better.
Yeah, FC, it feels like they're working their way into the run game. I'm not sure I really trust it against a good run defense. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they couldn't run it at all against the Ravens. But it does feel like there's progress from last year and from last week. And, as the season's progressing, what's your take on this Steelers run game?
It's going to come down to the performance of the offensive line. I hope DeCastro said he was rusty. I don't think he was bad, but there's more to the running game than just the offensive line. Eric Ebron and Vance McDonald are going to have to do a better job. They did miss TJ Watt. I thought Vance McDonald did a decent job as the lead blocker, as the H-back. You can tell it's really not his thing. Play calling is going to have to be original. You can't call the same run. You can't come into a game with basically 4 runs and just run them nonstop. I believe the Steelers they attempted to hand the ball to Deion Johnson on the quick reverse to open up the game. I believe that they want to get the ball in as many playmakers' hands as they can. Could they have success against top 5 teams running the ball? Sure, but you're going to have to show that you can attack all levels of the field. Mm-hmm. So the running game is predicated off of the Steelers' ability to throw the ball, and that comes off the ability to be able to block them up. It's just as much as the game changes, as much as it stays the same. And okay, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, it's worth noting, FC, the Steelers haven't fielded the same starting 5 offensive linemen in any game so far this year, and they're 3-0.
Correct. And they've been pretty decent, because Ben still holds on to the ball a little bit too long at times. For as much as I complain about that, it's one of the traits that I love. Him reading, the deep, even going back to this, maybe the second option on a route that's a little bit vertical, where maybe Juju or Johnson or whoever, can break free, and he would rather, make a play than just take the quick check down. But you got to tip your hat to Chuck Secufer. He's played so much better than anybody could expect. I think Marquise Pouncey's been solid this year, and as much as I like to pick on Villanueva, he's given up a sack and he has a 1 horseshit penalty against him. It's not too bad. Yeah,
pretty good start. I don't know where they're going to be next year. They'll be fielding another 5, but that's that's the way that goes. Perch, it feels like there's you can just start to see a little bit of the speed element injected in the Steelers offense that wasn't there very much last year. Like Deontay Johnson felt like he was a big speed add, and he's not even really that fast. But you see it with McFarland and Chase Claypool. It makes a big difference.
Yeah. With Washington, they kind of drafted him to be that deep downfield guy, but he doesn't have elite speed. But he's kind of crafty at it. But with Claypool, you have an athletic freak. And McFarland, he looked really solid. One cut, pretty good vision, quick decision making, slashing kind of a guy. Not the biggest field, but he's got good acceleration, and if he can hold on to the ball, he might carve himself out a pretty nice spot in the rotation.
Yep. And it's a little bit concerning that he dropped the first ball thrown to him, but I just feel like it's you got to cut a guy a little bit of slack. It's his first NFL action, but yeah, you can see there's if they stay committed to mixing it up with the running backs they have, then I like the group a lot. It's just like if you try to make any one of them take 30 carries or 25 carries a game, give them a lot of touches, I'm not sure that any of them really work very well, but it feels like in tandem they've been pretty good. I mentioned this again in the article, second time in the entire history of the franchise that they had a running back rush for 100 yards in all three of the first games of the season. It's only, I think if my research was correct, I think it's the fifth time in 44 years that they have rushed for 100 yards as a team the first three games of the season. And three of those are under Tomlin, believe it or not. So that was pretty remarkable too. There's some hope for it. I'm just not really sure they faced the kind of stout run defense that would really, tell the tale about where they're at with the whole thing. But the other thing I noticed positive, FC, was that, if Eric Ebron is maybe not the best inline blocker in, the red zone or goal line, and I was suggesting or thinking out loud last week on the show about that they really needed to get him split out wide. So because it's like that takes away that's like blocking his guy anyway, because they got to send somebody out with him. And almost no matter who they send out with him, if he's going to get isolated in single coverage, is going to have a hard time covering him. And that seemed to work out as well. Last week's game, what's your take on Eric Ebron through three games, good and bad?
Not a great inline blocker, which would be the bad. The good is, oh boy, does he scare safeties. You want to talk about adding speed to the offense? That is a very underrated add, because through the first 3 weeks, he didn't necessarily make the play, but he right past the safety, and that safety was like, oh boy, that can't happen. I cannot be getting beat over the top by a 255-pound tight end. So I believe that opens up the run game, opens up the crossing routes a little bit more, for Juju, for Johnson. He sometimes struggles with catching the ball. It's been a knock going back to his days in North Carolina, but he is a phenomenal athlete. He is a playmaker. He can high point the ball. He's a red zone weapon. I think he has the third most touchdown receptions in the NFL since 2016, which is crazy. But it's, I think, 19 total touchdowns since 2016. Since you have no AB, I believe that puts him in third in that category, which is ridiculous. It came up on the game, and I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, no that actually happened, yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I question the addition of Ebron and Derek Watt this offseason, a second tight end, or making Vance McDonald a second tight end and a fullback. I just didn't see how that personnel was going to all be on the field at the same time. But seeing, Watt being a stud on special teams and, success as a lead blocker before getting injured, I understand the methods of the madness now. Sure.
Perch, I feel like the offense hasn't really even been stretched yet this year. I can't remember. I'm not sure they've been in no huddle. Even in a 2-minute drill, it felt like they had guys go out of bounds and had timeouts. So they weren't really in a hurry up mode so much. Kind of feels like at some point, they're going to rely on that, and a lot of new faces. So that's something we'd be concerned about.
No, week one. I mean, that was the first time Ben looked comfortable the first week as he kind of went into the hurry up, no huddle.
Oh, that's right. They did a little bit there towards the end of the half. Yeah. Sorry,
got the touchdown, and it looked like he hadn't missed a beat. It's I think I'd have a little concern that, boy, he doesn't have a whole lot of history with any of these receivers outside of Juju. Even the tight ends, it's kind of a new group to him, but I think he's worked through it, and that first week kind of gave me some confidence there, and that's just the strength of Ben's game. So, I think that'll be a part of it. But like you said, they haven't really been stretched yet. They really haven't been down a ton. I guess this last game they were down, 11 points or whatever, but it was early in the game, and they didn't have to really go away from their game plan right away. So, I think that they're leaving some points on the board each game. I think they could possibly be a 30-point a game offense, or they could score 30 to beat somebody if, they get a game against Mahomes or somebody like that, or against the Ravens where they're going to have to put up a lot of points.
Sure. I mean, I am kind of impressed with that Ben is, he's adapted to this role with where he has this really good defense. He's adapted to this role of, getting them in the right checks and the right, adjustments at the line, and making good decisions with the football, and just being a point guard, distributing the ball, not having to, like sometimes he feels like point guards do from time to time in basketball. They feel like they have to score because no one else is shooting it well. And he's capable of doing that, as we've all seen for a long time now, but it just feels like he's in the distribution mode right now, trying to get to know these people. Like, I just go back to this theme. It just feels like the Steelers are working themselves into shape while the season is going on, which is kind of something they do ordinarily anyway, but they've managed to do it without blemish in their loss column. So that makes me feel kind of optimistic. FC, let's talk a little bit on the other side of the ball. The Steelers have kind of been a little schizophrenic on defense. There have been times when, like the second half last week, they gave up 5 completions, 40 yards, and had an interception, and gave up, I think, 8 running yards or something in the entire second half. But there's other times, the first half of the game, they seem to be kind of, giving up chunk plays, getting moved on at will. What do you attribute that? Is it like you said something earlier about play calling on both sides of the ball? You think they're just not in good calls sometimes?
Offensively, I had some issues with the repetitive of the same running plays. I would like to see a little bit more. Defensively, was more personnel usage. I meant to look it up. I wanted to see how many plays that Chris Wormley and Buggs played in the second half, because I remember in the first half thinking, boy, are they both terrible. They're both. We have big issues stopping the run when we have either one of them in. The shocking thing is how good of a play we're getting from the backup outside linebackers. Highsmith got sucked in on one run. That's going to happen to any rookie. But he's a solid run defender, better run defender than I expected him to be. Really, tight ends, struggle to block him. And he actually has done nice against offensive tackles. The biggest thing in the second half, I think, was the play of Hayward and Stephen Tuitt, which, whenever those two dominate, our defense is absolutely incredible, because Dupree and Watt coming off the edge is one thing, but if you have no place to step up to, you're done. They're the best. It will look a lot like the Giants game where Saquon Barkley you just have nowhere to go. It's a vice that just immediately crushes you.
Yeah, I mean I think that's been the secret to their pass rushing success the last 3 years or 4 years now, where they just have such good interior pass rush presence, whether it's it's Hayward and Tuitt or Vince Williams coming on the blitz, even base downs, Alualo. They have such good guys inside that with the super talented edge guys that they have or rushing from, they got so many guys coming from the outside that push that pocket, and there's no place to go, no escape. And even used to be that one of their weaknesses was with the quarterback that could move a little bit, that they played so focused on contain that they just wouldn't even really be able to get after the quarterback. but they even seem better at that now. Like they played contain against Deshaun Watson, but they still managed to get to him quite a bit, I thought. Perch, where was I going with this? Oh, by the way, Chris Wormley, 7 snaps, Bugs 4. That's for the whole game. And I agree with you, though, that they did look bad. It's amazing how bad you can look only playing
11 total.
like 11 snaps. Yeah, you can do a lot of
Wormley
damage.
looks like a statue. I've noticed every week I'd look and say, who the hell is that? And every time it's been Wormley. Just stuck in the mud like a statue, stiff, unathletic, like run stuff around.
Unleash Carlos Davis.
Can't get off a block. I mean, Wormley, I remember him being a little bit better than that for the Ravens, but he does not look good.
It doesn't look like he has this quote, to quote the great FC, the sand in his pants to really hold a point against a double team in a 3-4 defense. Like that just doesn't.
Unleash Carlos Davis.
Hey, I'll tell you what. Rookie class looking pretty good. Not too bad. Not too shabby. So yeah, why not a little more Carlos Davis as well? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I thought maybe in the first couple of games the Steelers blitzed a little bit too much, and that it became kind of like a lot of. You see, they gave up plays in coverage where they didn't really have that many guys in coverage, and so that's not really on the coverage guys. That's on the pass rush not getting home. If you're sending 5 guys or 6 guys, they had to get there or disrupt the play enough, because you're never going to be able to really shut down the field that way. But it did feel like maybe the second half they didn't blitz as much. They played a little bit more man defense instead of zones, and that seemed to work out okay. But we had, again, a miscommunication on a fail on a setup for, they gave up a touchdown where, they had a linebacker on the wide receiver and a cornerback on David Johnson. And it's kind of like I can't really come up with a good reason for, even on second down, I can't come up with a good reason for having Vince Williams staying in the middle of the field when David Johnson splits out wide. And I understand it's like you're afraid they're going to run the ball against you, but we saw a little bit of this last year. They were burned a couple of times, big time with that, with the base linebacker getting schemed into covering a wide receiver. Something got to be done to adjust for that, does it not, Perch?
I concur. I don't have anything else to add other than we talked about it last year, and it seems like, too often we say, why the hell is Vince Williams covering their best receiver? And it seems to happen quite a bit. Yeah,
but it's kind of like, I feel like you have Vince Williams tucked in the middle, kept him towards the middle because you're afraid they might run. But if David Johnson's on the outside, you're like, unless they run like an end around or the quarterback himself takes off, it doesn't seem like.
You're right. There's no adjustment. There's no switching. There's no recognition of, hey, I'm Joe Hayden. Why the hell am I covering this running back and our linebackers covering some fast receiver? I'm sure that the coaches have an answer for it. Probably one we wouldn't like.
I mean, they must want them to stay that way. I mean, that's my take on it, is that they're doing it consistently enough, and it's veteran players doing it, that's their expectation for how they would like to play it. And I understand it's a zone coverage. It's not like Vince Williams is really covering, intentionally covering a wide receiver in man, but sometimes the zone works out that way because you end up with a guy in your zone who just keeps going and you don't have anybody to hand him off to. And I think that's a little bit of the case. The near touchdown that was missed where Williams was in coverage like I'm talking about, I just feel like you just can't let yourself get schemed into that, even on base downs, as good as Vince Williams is, and he's respectable even in coverage. It's just not something I really want to see. So that's that kind of thing. I just feel like they seem to have made a lot of adjustments on defense over the course of the last couple of years. Like I do give them credit. I feel like the difference between where the defense is since, maybe since Minka got in last year to now. I mean, compare that to what was happening in the year or so before that with Artie Burns and Sean Davis and, just problems all across the defensive coverage. And they've little by little chipped at it with better personnel and with better communication and better decision-making. But, yeah, I feel like if there's going to be a downfall, it's going to be that they're going to give up some touchdowns in games where they're otherwise dominating because, that's a Steelers tradition for as long as I can remember. And a lot of third and long conversions, that kind of thing, has got to give you, angina if you're a defensive coach and you weigh 350 pounds like some of them do. Anything else to add, gentlemen, before we move on to just kind of talk for a second about the rest of the league and get out of here? No? Okay, well then, I guess it's time for our illustrious pick segment brought to us by
Sports and Shit. Great place to find dog beds, all your sports and Steelers swag. Mike Pereira, Dean Blandino, and Jack Collinsworth. Nepotism at your finest, folks. And what the fuck is Liam McHugh ever doing hosting football? Like Football Night in America, he would not go away. I was like, shut the fuck up, Liam, and let's see some Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, off with you. Good choices. Was it Mike Pereira that did the Steelers game this week, or that was he works for Fox? He
works for Fox. He's on right now.
He was mystified. There was a call on Sunday where he went through this detailed explanation for, what the call was going to be, and then the call, of course, wasn't that. And he was like, okay. I don't understand. Yeah, neither do we, Mike. Perch, you guys cleaned my clock pretty good last week with the picks. A couple of I looked good for like a couple of quarters on my pick of Washington over the Browns, but did not happen for me. Just a quick run around here. About your Indianapolis Colts against the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears went to Nick Foles, had a great comeback win, despite the fact that Foles, only really looked good for a couple of plays, but those couple of plays were the difference in the game. Somehow the Colts are a 2.5-point favorite in Chicago. What's your take on this situation, Perch?
Man, I'm just so distracted by Mark Rippon out here ripping up the Jets defense right now that I had to throw that in.
Great.
That was a late round target for the Steelers for me in that draft a couple years ago, whatever that was. I don't believe in the Bears or the Colts. Smoke and mirrors, I keep expecting both of them to start going on a losing streak. Phillip Rivers usually pretty good for that around week 5 or 6. He starts melting down. The Bears, I don't know. I don't think much of them. Bears are at home. I guess I'll take them to win and cover.
Yeah. FC. By the way, Tariq Cohen, friend of the show, was tore his ACL, gone for the season.
Devin Montgomery's actually a pretty nice back. I don't think they didn't give the ball enough for Chicago. But Big Dick Nick Foles coming in. That was his nickname for the Philadelphia Eagles, not mine for him.
Let's hope
he actually is magic at times. The Colts actually force a ton of turnovers. I believe they had 2 defensive touchdowns last week. Phillip Rivers, outdoors, wind, Lake Michigan. I'll take the Bears and the points. I think the Colts may win by a point, but I'll take the cover.
Yeah, I'll take the Bears and the points too. Same sort of thing. It just feels like Nick Foles injects at least a little bit of excitement in their offense. And just as, maybe he makes a couple of fewer just absolutely gut-wrenching mistakes. Because that's the thing with Trubisky. It's like this year now, he's been looking a little bit better, but he's just good for a killer mistake at a bad time. Much like Phil Rivers, the guy on the other side of the field this week, who has a reputation for that as well. Perch, maybe a better question for you rather than picking games is you mentioned you don't really like either of these teams, and I was thinking that looking around at the picks this week that I'm not sure there's very many teams that I really love. I mean, I think it's easy to love Kansas City. I actually kind of love the Steelers team this year. Like I'm kind of really enjoying who they are. But beyond those two, who else do you love?
Nobody. I think the Packers and the Seahawks have got a lot of talent, and I think that they could possibly win a Super Bowl. I think that they could, come out of the NFC, one of those teams, and beat Kansas City or whoever else comes out of the AFC. But you're right. After, Kansas City just seems like there's a pretty significant drop to the second tier after the way they dismantled the Ravens, which I didn't see coming. But, they hammered them again.
Yeah, FC, what's your take on this? Who are the teams in the NFL right now after 3 weeks that you're buying?
Buying, Kansas City would be obvious. I'm not ready to sell necessarily Baltimore, but if they get down by more than 10 points, they're in trouble. My surprise team, despite last week's performance, I think the Rams. I look at the weapons that they have. I'm a big fan of Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Higbee's nice. Everett, their second tight end's nice. I know it comes down to quarterback play with Jared Goff, and Aaron Donald really hasn't started to bring it in a nasty way. But I really like the Steelers too. I think that they may be a team of destiny in a way to play the Chiefs, and that's going to be interesting. A lot more interesting than people think.
I'll give you a surprise team in the sense that I think to myself, who's a team that I, as a Steelers fan, don't really want to see them play for anything important, and that would be the Buffalo Bills. I'm not sure they're nearly as good as Kansas City, and I'm not even sure they're as good as the Steelers, but there's something about them and their style of play that I just don't think is a particularly good match, especially if the quarterback's going to play like out of his mind. In Buffalo, he's been unbelievable, Josh Allen. Their defense is good enough that they're not going to roll over for the Steelers offense. And their offense can do some things that are sort of outside of the normal attack that you would face outside of some structure. And the quarterback can run. The quarterback can really run. I don't know. What do you think about them, Perch? Are you still sort of on the fence with them?
There's another team in that division I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs if I was the Steelers.
Correct.
I
was thinking the exact same fucking thing.
The Patriots still have
Cam Newton. No.
Well, the Steelers have pretty good success over the years. I don't think Cam Newton's ever had a good game against the Steelers, but Belichick, his defense has always given us fits.
Rex, Burkhead, Tony Michelle.
He'll find a way to out-coach the Steelers. I don't want any part of. I'd rather play the Chiefs.
Fucking Izzo.
All right, well, that brings me to the next game this week to talk about, and that is the New England Patriots visiting the Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City squeaked out a game where they were outplayed. Then they went to Baltimore, and crushed what a lot of people think is the second best team in the NFL, the Ravens. Is it a little bit of a letdown game for them? Excuse me. I'll throw that to you, Perch.
COVID boy. Protocol. Get him off the podcast now. Put him in protocol.
Nutrient testing.
Here's the deal. We saw, I think there's two major MVP candidates in the league. Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes. You could probably throw Rodgers in there. As good as Belichick is, as good as that Patriots defense is, there ain't no way in hell Cam Newton's keeping up with Patrick Mahomes if it gets into any sort of a scoring contest. Then that game is in Kansas City, and the line is 7. I think the Chiefs win that by 10 points.
FC, you're going to go along with them?
I actually think he's fucking right. I actually like Kansas City. I like them by about 10 points. I think that the one thing that New England's going to be able to do is take away Tyreek Hill. I think the one thing that they're going to have no chance of doing is taking away Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce in the passing game, and that's going to be the difference. Talking about point guard play and distributing the football, that would be Patrick Mahomes this year. How many throws over 30 yards has he even attempted? It's hitting the receivers and letting them make plays.
Yeah, his brain's catching up to his body, which is frightening. He's got one of the best arms ever. He's very mobile, and now the game's slowing down to it, and he's learning the position. Good God, that team, they rattle off a handful of Super Bowls. I mean, they're going to be tough to stop unless the salary cap just eats away their talent or he gets hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where it's at. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. A lot of teams have looked fantastic, making a Super Bowl run. Great quarterbacks have, hit a bad stretch. Not too many are just, in it every year, even great ones. So that is, their defense. I'm still not convinced their defense is more than good enough to win with their offense, right? But their offense is fantastic.
Here's the thing. If they lose Chris Jones, they are in so much trouble. And I don't think that Belichick's going to let Chris Jones beat them. If they lose Chris Jones, you can might as well just take Frank Clark and put him on the bench because he's absolutely, completely useless.
Hey, what's Chris Jones' nickname, FC? Do you remember your nickname for him?
Yes, I do. It goes along with Nick Foles. You got to keep this pace.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was just thinking after the Nick Foles thing, you got to throw a tripod reference in there.
Exactly. Tripod. He's Paul Bolton. It's a 40-yard line.
Yeah, and I feel like when I watch Kansas City, I feel very vindicated as a sort of my draft favorites because that team is just loaded with guys that I was super into, and he's one of them, man. I
still don't think Tyreek Hill's character would be good for the Steelers.
No.
I know. Mahomes, we both like. Chris Jones, we both like. Yes, there's actually more to him than that. You got to remember, Tardif being out, I thought it was going to be a huge blow. Kalichio Semele to Kansas City. Great.
Really has been a fantastic addition.
It is. Just perfect.
So tell me this. Which team during the regular season could catch Kansas City and have a puncher's chance to beat them out of what they have left? They play New England, Las Vegas, Buffalo. Puncher's chance maybe for those teams. Denver and the Jets, no way. Carolina, not happening. Then they have Las Vegas, Tampa Bay, maybe, Tom Brady shootout. Then Denver, Miami, New Orleans, Atlanta, Los Angeles. Are we seeing a loss in there for them?
Yeah, it'll beat a divisional team. The Chargers almost got them earlier in the year. It was a real close game. Chargers kind of had that and lost it. One of those teams will jump up and grab it.
I would be shocked if they're an undefeated team during the regular season that loses in the playoffs earlier than expected. Because I don't know if they're going to really be tested the way that some teams will be able to test them come playoff time. Be it if it's the Steelers, if it's a rematch with the Ravens, if it's in the Super Bowl against Green Bay. Because everybody talks about players on a mission. Aaron Rodgers is on a mission.
It's true.
I don't think there's any. Russell Wilson might look and be like, I'm the fucking Susan Lucci of the NFL. Because right now, I find it hard not to give Aaron Rodgers the MVP.
Yeah, I think I might go Russell Wilson at the moment, but yeah.
I can understand that. I really could.
Yeah, well, only one way to find out. They got to play the games.
Right.
Yeah,
Alan Lazard looks like John Stallworth.
and go ahead.
I'm going Brett Rippon. You guys watching this game?
No, I'm going to watch it when we're finished because some of us, have to prepare and we don't get a chance to see the game, and other people spoil it for them by talking about it on the podcast. But go ahead, Perch.
Better than any Steelers backup quarterback performance since Charlie Batch. That's all.
Well,
third string.
Very and rowdy, baby.
Unshocking. I'm not surprised. Hey, on the flip side of that, before we sign off, on the flip side of the teams we love, who's going to get the number one pick in the 2021 NFL draft? I'll start with you, FC.
Dallas Cowboys, but it won't be a traditional way.
Oh, okay. But I'm talking about who's going to end up with the worst record.
Oh, who's going to be the worst team in the NFL?
Yeah.
Carolina Panthers.
T-S. Jets.
Oh, yeah, it's the Jets.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Jets. I think the Jets are where it's at. Although, Adam Gase might be able to find a way to get himself out of win himself out of the number one pick for some reason, right?
Well, I think
who's going to be the first NFL coach fired?
That would not surprise.
I'm going to take Dan Quinn in Atlanta, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would say Gase, but I think
Arthur Blank was seen in the frickin' Home Depot parking lot looking for a coach to hire.
I think the Jets are smart enough to keep Gase on all year so they get the number 1 pick. I think if they fire him, they may accidentally win 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't risk that.
He's taking his ass back to Clemson.
There you go.
No, you can't risk winning a couple of meaningless games late that'll cost you the number 1 pick. There's going to be a lot of competition for that. There always is, some teams hanging around there. All right. Well, listen, we don't have a Steelers game to talk about this week, but the Eagles coming to town next week. We'll talk about the Eagles and their trouble.
Bounce it to me.
The to me?
Person, bounce it to me wins.
Oh, dumps it to me. Lake dumps it to me. Yeah. Carson Wentz. Yeah. We once knew ye, Carson Wentz, but not anymore. Yeesh. Listen, since we don't have a Steelers game to talk about, I'm still going to give you a last word. What's our thought going into the weekend? Are we just going to enjoy it and go fish and perch? You tell us.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Sit around and watch these other crappy games. There's not a really great schedule this week. I might try to sneak in that Browns game. I don't think we talked about the Browns and Cowboys. Who the Ravens playing this week? I don't know. But, yeah, I'll try and sneak in a couple of those. But for the most part, I'm football free.
Yeah, football free. Yeah, you'll sneak a peek. The Ravens are playing the I'm just looking through here. They don't have I don't think they have a
the team with no name. The Redskins.
Oh, yes, the Washington football team. Yes,
Washington team with no name.
Football team.
It's the battle of D.C., as it were. And FC, final thought from you.
Even though that there's no Steeler game, don't go outside and do yard work. Sit around the house, drink some beers, watch some football. Be happy.
You might be able to actually convince your significant other that they're, just go. Don't even mention that there's not a Steelers game, and then you'll have the day. You'll have like 3 hours to yourself that you wouldn't.
He's the one who told me there was no Steelers game. I'm fucked. I mean, she knows. She's cool. She loves football too, so I'm blessed about that.
Yeah, you're definitely in trouble. That's for sure.
Yeah.
As always. Well, gentlemen, we're all in trouble because we're out of time for this week's show. On behalf of my friends FC, Dom, and Perch, that's Steel Perch. By the way, it was pointed out that you don't have an AKA, therefore there must not be a real Steel Perch.
Yeah, it's been legally changed on the driver's license.
It's a Steel Perch. Is your first name Steel, last name Perch? I just asked.
It is now.
That's my final thought. For those guys and for everybody who's lucky enough to have caught this show and is listening to it or watching it, on behalf of everybody at Steeler Fury and so on, I'm your host, Bradshaw Ben, a.k.a. Will Massasack, also known
Wear a mask.
Accidental Zen. My name has been legally changed to all 3 of those things. And we'll talk to you next week after the Steelers have a good bye week. And hopefully don't say goodbye. With that, talk to you next week. Go get them, Steelers.
Go Stars. Go Dogs.